Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to Postcard English Stories, where every story feels like a letter from the heart. Today I invite you to join me on a quiet journey, a journey into memories, into words that were never spoken, and a letter that was never sent. Maybe you too have words you've held in your heart for a long time. Let's open that secret envelope together and see what stories live inside. Part 1. The Memory That Stayed. Have you ever had something in your heart that you always wanted to say, but somehow the right moment never came? Maybe you were waiting for the perfect time, or maybe you were just too afraid of what might happen after the words left your lips. For me, it was a letter, a simple letter that I wrote but never sent. It was meant for a friend. Not just any friend, but one of those rare people who once knew you better than you knew yourself. We met when life was still easy, still full of possibilities. We shared everything, our dreams for the future, our fears, the small, silly things that made us laugh for hours. We made promises to stay in touch forever, believing as only young hearts do, that time and distance could never touch us. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Little by little the phone calls became shorter. The messages came less often. Work, family, other friendships, different cities. They all slowly built a wall between us. At first I told myself it was just temporary. We'll catch up soon. I said, we're just busy. I said, but soon kept stretching further and further away until one day I realized I didn't even know where my friend was anymore. Still, I thought about writing. So many times I picked up my phone, started typing a message, and then deleted it. So many nights I sat with a pen in my hand, staring at a blank page, trying to find the right words to bridge the silence. And then one rainy evening, the kind of evening when the whole world feels like it's wrapped in a soft grey blanket, I finally sat down to write. No plans, no overthinking, just me, my memories and the quiet tapping of rain against the window. I started simply, "Hello, it's been a long time." The words came easily, like a river that had been blocked for too long. I wrote about the little things I remembered, the late-night talks that lasted until sunrise, the secret jokes that only we understood, the afternoons spent doing absolutely nothing and feeling completely happy. I wrote about how grateful I was for those moments, even if I had never said it out loud before. I also wrote about the sadness, how it hurt to watch the distance grow, how sometimes I wondered if I should have tried harder. I admitted the truth that I had never dared to say that I missed my friend. More than I knew how to express. Page after page, the letter grew longer. I didn't worry about how it sounded or whether it was too much. It wasn't about making it perfect. It was about finally letting the words breathe. I wrote like I was speaking across time and space to a friend who in some corner of the universe might still be listening. By the time I finished, my hand was tired and my heart was both heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with the memories that would never come back the same way again. Light because somehow writing it down had lifted a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. I folded the letter carefully. No envelope, no stamp, no address. Just a quiet promise to myself that even if the letter was never sent, even if it was never read, the feelings it carried had finally been honored. That night I placed the letter inside a small wooden box I kept in my desk drawer, a box full of tiny souvenirs from the past, old postcards, concert tickets, faded photographs, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not because anything had changed between us, but because something had changed inside me. Part 2. Words that waited too long. When I opened the letter again the next morning, the ink had dried, but the emotions were still fresh. Reading my own words, I realized something surprising. I had written things I never even knew I needed to say. Things that had been waiting quietly inside me for years, like seeds hidden under the snow, finally ready to bloom. The letter wasn't just about the friendship we had lost. It was about who I had been back then and the parts of myself that I had slowly let go of as time passed. I had written about laughter, yes, but I had also written about fears. The fear of growing apart. The fear of becoming strangers to someone who once felt like family. The fear that maybe, just maybe, I had been easier to forget than I wanted to believe. I had confessed how much those years had meant to me, even though I had never said it at the time. I had apologized not for anything specific, but for all the missed chances, all the times I could have reached out but didn't. All the times I thought, tomorrow I'll call tomorrow, and then let tomorrow slip silently into the next day and the next until it became a habit of silence. As I read the letter again, I realized how much we leave unsaid, thinking there will always be time. We hold back our gratitude, our forgiveness, our love, waiting for some perfect future moment to express it. But life doesn't always wait. It moves forward with or without our permission. And if we're not careful, we wake up one day with pockets full of words we never said, and hearts a little heavier for carrying them so long. I thought about my friend. I wondered if she ever thought about me too. Did she ever pick up her phone and hesitate the way I had? Did she ever wish she could turn back time and fix the spaces between us? Or had she too moved on quietly, filing away our friendship under the chapter called Once Upon a Time? The truth is, I didn't know, and maybe I would never know. But somehow that realization didn't hurt as much as I expected, because as I read my letter again, I understood something important. It didn't matter if she ever read these words. It didn't even matter if she remembered me the way I remembered her. What mattered was that I had remembered, that I had honored the friendship we shared, that I had chosen to keep the good memories alive instead of burying them under regret. And maybe that was enough. I sat by the window, the letter resting in my lap, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. Outside the world was quiet and grey, but inside me there was a strange kind of warmth. Writing the letter had been like unlocking a door I didn't know was closed. It let out the sadness, yes, but it also let in forgiveness, not just for my friend, but for myself. I realized that we are often much harder on ourselves than we need to be. We expect ourselves to be perfect friends, perfect communicators, perfect human beings. But the truth is, we are all just doing the best we can with the tools and courage we have at the time. Sometimes we fall short. Sometimes we drift away. Sometimes we miss our chance to say, I miss you, or I'm sorry, or thank you. But that doesn't erase the love we once shared. It doesn't erase the joy of the moments that were real and true. I folded the letter once more, pressing it gently between my palms, as if sealing it with a silent promise. I tucked it back into its wooden box next to the old postcards and the faded photographs. And this time when I closed the drawer, I didn't feel sadness pressing down on me. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for having had something so beautiful that it still touched my heart even years later. Maybe that's what the best friendships leave behind. Not just memories, but echoes. Echoes that remind us, even in the quietest corners of our lives, that we were once deeply, truly connected. Part 3. Why I never sent it. You might wonder, after writing a letter filled with so much heart, so much honesty, why didn't I send it? The answer is not simple. It wasn't because I didn't care. It wasn't because I thought the words didn't matter. It was because deep inside I realized sometimes words are meant to heal the person who writes them, not necessarily the person who would read them. At first I thought about sending it. I imagined putting it in an envelope, carefully writing my friend's name and address, placing a stamp in the corner and walking it to the nearest mailbox. I pictured her surprise as she opened it, the way her eyes might widen, the way her hands might tremble just a little. Maybe she would smile. Maybe she would cry. Maybe she would feel all the things I felt as I wrote it. But then another thought crept in quietly, soft as a whisper. What if too much time has passed? What if she has changed? What if I am just a distant memory to her now, a name she barely recalls? The truth is, people move on. We all do. And sometimes reaching back into the past doesn't bring healing. It brings confusion, sadness, even hurt. Sometimes what we think will be a beautiful reconnection becomes a painful reminder of what can never quite be repaired. I wasn't afraid of being ignored. I wasn't even afraid of rejection. I was afraid of disturbing something delicate. The memory of a beautiful friendship, frozen in time, still pure, still untouched by the hard edges of change. I realized that by sending the letter, I might be asking her to carry emotions she was no longer prepared to hold. I might be opening doors she had already closed gently and respectfully. And perhaps the kindest thing I could do for both of us was to let those doors remain closed. Not out of fear, not out of sadness, but out of love. There's a quiet kind of love, the kind that doesn't demand anything in return. The kind that simply says, I'm grateful for what we shared. I wish you well, wherever you are. You don't owe me anything, and I don't need to remind you of the past. It took me a long time to understand that real love, real friendship, sometimes means knowing when to step back, when to hold the memories gently without trying to rewrite them. The letter stayed in its little wooden box, not because it wasn't important, but because it was so important that I wanted to preserve it exactly as it was, a quiet act of love, a private moment of healing. Sometimes closure doesn't come from conversations or reunions. Sometimes closure comes from within, from sitting alone with your own heart and whispering, it's okay. It mattered and it will always matter. On some days I still think about her when I hear a song we once loved, when I pass by a coffee shop where we used to sit for hours talking about everything and nothing, when I stumble across an old photo tucked into a book, and when those memories come, I don't feel regret anymore. I feel gratitude. I feel a quiet smile inside me, the kind you give to something precious that once lived in your world, even if only for a while. So no, I never sent the letter. But in writing it, I sent a message to my own heart, a message of forgiveness, of release, of gentle, enduring love. And somehow that was more than enough. Part 4. Lessons from an unsent letter. As time went on, I often found myself returning to that letter in my mind, not reading it, not rewriting it, just remembering it was there, safely tucked away. It became something like a quiet companion, a reminder that even the words we never speak can change us deeply. At first, I thought the letter was only about my friend, about what was lost between us, about the goodbyes we never said. But slowly I began to realize the letter was never just about her. It was also about me. Writing that letter, even though it was never sent, taught me lessons I didn't even know I needed. It taught me that holding emotions inside doesn't make them disappear. They stay quietly shaping the way we move through life, sometimes making us cautious, sometimes making us heavy until we finally give them a voice. By putting my feelings into words, I gave myself permission to acknowledge them, to honor them, to let them breathe. I also learned something about forgiveness. For so long I had carried a little pocket of guilt inside me. Guilt for letting the friendship drift. Guilt for not trying harder. Guilt for staying silent when maybe I should have reached out. But through writing I forgave myself. I realized that friendships, like rivers, sometimes split into different paths. Not because we stop caring, but because life carries us in directions we could never have predicted. I learned that it's okay to love someone quietly from a distance. That love doesn't have to look like constant communication or shared holidays or birthday calls. Sometimes love simply means wishing someone well, hoping they're happy, even if you're no longer part of their everyday life. Another lesson I learned was about timing. We often think there's always going to be later. Later to say thank you. Later to apologize. Later to catch up. But later is not guaranteed. All we truly have is now. The unsent letter became a gentle reminder to speak up when I can, to cherish the people I love while they are still near, to say the things that matter before silence becomes the habit. And yet the lesson wasn't harsh or painful. It was tender, like a soft light slowly filling a room. Because even though I missed my chance to send that particular letter, I still had today. I still had the chance to live differently because of what I had learned. Sometimes the most powerful moments of growth happen quietly inside our own hearts, where no one else can see them. And that's okay. The letter also helped me see beauty in imperfection. Our friendship had been imperfect. Our ending had been imperfect. But does that make it any less real? Any less precious? No, real connections aren't perfect stories. They are messy, unpredictable, filled with mistakes and misunderstandings. But they are also filled with laughter, with shared moments, with love. And that beautiful, imperfect love is what I chose to remember. As the seasons changed outside my window, I found myself changing too. The regrets softened into gratitude. The sadness became something sweeter, something more peaceful. The letter remained in its wooden box, but it was no longer a symbol of what I had lost. It was a symbol of everything I had gained: the courage to feel, the willingness to forgive, the grace to let go without bitterness, the strength to love even without answers. That letter I never sent became one of the most important things I ever wrote. Not because it changed someone else's life, but because it changed mine. Part 5. If I could say one more thing. If I could say just one more thing to her. One more thing beyond all the memories, all the years, all the words I folded into that letter I never sent, it would be simple. Thank you. Thank you for being there during a chapter of my life that mattered deeply. Thank you for the endless laughter that still echoes in my mind. Thank you for the moments of comfort you offered without even realizing it. Thank you for being a part of my story. Even if it was only for a while, I would want her to know that friendships don't have to last forever to be real. That just because something ends doesn't mean it wasn't beautiful. That even though life pulled us in different directions, the mark she left on my heart is permanent, gentle, and kind. If I could, I would tell her that I don't regret a single moment. Not the beginning, not the ending, not the years of silence that followed, because everything, every moment of connection, every tear, every silence shaped the person I am today. And I would want her to know wherever she is, whatever life she is living now, I truly deeply hope she is happy. Maybe she has found new friends who laugh with her the way we once did. Maybe she has built a life filled with new memories, new dreams, new songs to sing, and that thought makes me smile. Not with sadness, but with genuine full-hearted joy. Because true friendship, even when it fades, leaves behind something precious, the ability to wish another person well, even when they are no longer walking beside you. If I could, I would also tell her this: you were and always will be someone I carry with love in my heart. Not as a heavy burden, not as an old wound, but as a soft golden memory, one that lights up small corners of my life when I least expect it. I think that's the beautiful thing about love. It doesn't need permission to exist. It doesn't need to be seen or heard to remain real. It just is. It stays with us quietly, growing softer and wiser as we grow older. And so even though the letter remains unsent, even though the words remain folded in a box tucked away, their meaning has flown far beyond paper and ink, because the act of writing it changed how I see the world. It reminded me to treasure the people I love while they are here, to say the words that matter while I still have the chance to forgive gently both others and myself when life inevitably moves forward. And perhaps most importantly, it taught me that closure is not something we find outside ourselves. It is something we create within, with love, with memory, and with gratitude. So today, when I think of her, I no longer feel the sharp sting of loss. I feel the warmth of connection, a connection that in its own quiet way still exists. Not in the form of messages exchanged or calls returned, but in the simple, lasting truth that we shared something real, and that real things once planted never truly disappear. If you too have a letter you never sent, know this: you don't have to send it for it to matter. You don't have to receive an answer to find peace. Sometimes simply speaking your truth, even silently, is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Because every unsent letter, every unspoken word of love, every silent thank you becomes part of who we are. And sometimes that is enough. Thank you for listening to this story, dear friends. Sometimes the most meaningful letters are the ones we write for ourselves, not to change the past, but to heal the present. If you carry unsent words in your heart, know that they still have a place. They still have meaning. I hope today's story brought you a little peace, a little warmth, and maybe even the courage to write your own unsent letter. Until next time, stay kind, stay open, and always listen to the quiet stories your heart wants to tell. This is Postcard English Stories, where every story is a journey back to yourself. See you again soon.